They said an omega was good for nothing but scrubbing floors and bowing heads. They were wrong. When the most powerful alpha in the world lay dying in the snow, poisoned by his own inner circle, it wasn't his elite guards who saved him. It was me, Tessa Reynolds, the pack outcast. I dragged 200 pounds of dying wolf 6 miles through a storm that froze birds in midair. I didn't know he was the king. I didn't know saving him would put a target on my back. And I certainly didn't know that by morning, the man I saved would tear the world apart to find me. The wind didn't just blow in the Northern Territory. It screamed. Tessa Reynolds adjusted the thin, fraying scarf around her neck, squinting against the biting whiteout of the blizzard. At 22, she was the ghost of the Silver Pine pack. Not banished, but effectively invisible. As a wolfless omega, someone whose shifter spirit was too dormant to manifest, she lived in a shack 3 miles from the main estate, surviving on scraps and doing the laundry that the higher-ranking wolves felt was beneath them. Today, the storm, dubbed the White Death by the elders, had hit early. Tessa had been out checking her rabbit snares. It was a foolish risk, but hunger made you do foolish things. "Empty again," she muttered, her voice swallowed instantly by the gale. She turned to head back, her boots crunching through knee-deep drifts. That was when she saw it, a massive dark shape disrupting the pristine white of the snow. It wasn't a log, it was breathing. Tessa froze. A wolf that size could snap her in half with a sneeze. It was huge, its fur a midnight black that seemed to absorb the light, rippling with muscle even in its collapsed state. But something was wrong. Wolves didn't freeze. Their internal heat was like a furnace. This wolf was shivering. She crept closer, her instincts screaming at her to run. The scent hit her before she reached him, metallic blood and something sweet like rotting almonds. Wolfsbane. And not just any wolfsbane. This was the synthesized variety, blue night, used by hunters to drop alphas instantly. "Hey," she whispered, kneeling beside the massive head. "Can you hear me?" The wolf's eye cracked open. It was a shocking, molten gold. A growl rumbled in his chest, but it was weak, wet with fluid. He tried to snap at her, but his head lolled back into the snow. He was paralyzed. Tessa looked at his flank. A silver dart was embedded deep near the hind leg, the feathers marked with a crest she didn't recognize, a serpent entwined around a dagger. "You're not from Silver Pine," she realized. This was a foreign wolf. A rogue? No, rogues were mangy and starving. This wolf's coat was like velvet. He was high-born. If she left him, he would be dead in an hour. The poison would stop his heart, or the cold would finish him off. If she helped him, and he was an enemy of her alpha, she would be executed for treason. Tessa looked at the golden eye again. It was glazing over, the light fading. He looked lonely, just like her. "Damn it," she hissed. She pulled off her heavy canvas coat, shivering instantly as the sub-zero air hit her thin sweater. She jammed her hands into the snow to pack it tight, then grabbed the wolf's front paws. "I'm going to regret this," she grunted. "You better not eat me when you wake up." She couldn't carry him. He weighed at least 250 pounds. She needed leverage. She unhooked the plastic sled she used for hauling firewood from her back. It was cracked and old, but it would have to do. It took her 20 minutes of agonizing effort to roll the massive beast onto the sled. By the time he was secured with her rope, her fingers were blue. "Okay, big guy," she panted, grabbing the lead rope. "My shack is too cold. The old ranger station is 6 miles east. It has a stove. We go there." 6 miles, in a blizzard, dragging a dying alpha. Tessa Reynolds leaned forward, dug her boots into the ice, and pulled. The first mile was adrenaline. The second was agony. The wind had picked up, turning the world into a spinning vortex of ice shards. Every step sent a jolt of pain up Tessa's calves. The rope dug into her shoulders, chafing the skin raw through her sweater. Behind her, the wolf, she decided to call him Midnight in her head to keep herself sane, was drifting in and out of consciousness. Occasionally he would whimper, a sound so broken it made her heart ache. "Stay with me," she shouted over the wind, not looking back. "Don't you dare die on my sled. I don't dig graves in frozen ground." By the third mile, the terrain shifted. They had to cross Dead Man's Ridge, a narrow path with a steep drop-off. The wind here was ferocious, threatening to toss the sled over the edge. Tessa slipped. Her knee smashed into a hidden rock and she cried out, falling face first into the snow. For a moment, she just lay there. It was so cold. It would be so easy to just close her eyes. Growl. The sound was low, vibrating through the rope tied to her waist. She lifted her head. The wolf was watching her. He wasn't growling at her. He was growling for her, urging her up. I'm up," she choked out, wiping snow from her eyelashes. She forced herself to stand on her trembling leg. That was when the smell hit her. Not the wolfsbane, something else. Musk and ozone, scavengers. Out of the white haze, 2 pairs of yellow eyes appeared. Coyotes. But these were shifter coyotes, the bottom feeders of the supernatural world who waited for storms to pick off the weak. "Look at this! Heavy load for a little girl," one of them yipped, stepping onto the path. He was in human form, naked and shivering, but holding a jagged knife. The wolf on the sled let out a thunderous snarl, trying to rise, but the poison slammed him back down. Tessa didn't hesitate. She didn't have a wolf, but she had grown up dodging beatings from drunk pack members. She reached into her boot and pulled out her skinning knife. "He's sick," the coyote sneered. "Meat is meat." "Touch him and I'll gut you," Tessa said, her voice surprisingly steady. The coyote lunged. Tessa dropped low, dodging the clumsy strike, and slashed upward. Her blade caught the coyote's thigh. He howled, stumbling back. "She's crazy." The second one barked, staying back. "He's mine!" Tessa screamed, her eyes wild. "Back off!" The sheer ferocity of the small Omega startled them. Shifter coyotes were cowards at heart. Seeing her blade dripping red and the massive black wolf still snapping his jaws from the sled, they decided the meal wasn't worth the fight. They turned and vanished into the storm. Tessa didn't celebrate. She collapsed against the rope, dry heaving. She checked the wolf. His breathing was shallow. "We're halfway there," she whispered, stroking his ears. His fur was incredibly soft. "Just hold on." The last 3 miles were a blur of hallucination and grit. Tessa stopped feeling her feet. She stopped feeling her hands. She became a machine, placing one foot in front of the other, fueled only by the strange connection she felt to the beast behind her. Whenever she faltered, she felt his gaze on her back. It felt heavy, demanding, and possessive. Finally, the outline of the ranger station appeared, a sturdy log cabin, abandoned years ago by the humans. Tessa kicked the door open, dragging the sled inside. The silence of the cabin was deafening after the howling wind. She collapsed on the floorboards, her lungs burning like they were filled with glass. She couldn't rest. Not yet. She crawled over to the fireplace, her frozen fingers fumbling with the matches she kept in a waterproof tin. It took 5 tries to strike one. When the kindling finally caught, she almost sobbed with relief. She turned to the wolf. He had shifted. The massive beast was gone. In his place lay a man, a naked man, sprawled on the floorboards, shivering violently. Tessa gasped, scrambling back. Even covered in sweat and dirt, he was breathtaking. Dark hair matted to his forehead, a jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and a body that looked like it was carved from granite. But what made Tessa's breath hitch wasn't his beauty. It was the tattoo on his chest, a complex geometric design of a crown interwoven with a wolf skull. She knew that mark. Everyone knew that mark. It was on the news, on the flags, in the history books. This wasn't just a high-born alpha. This was Lachlan Moore, the Alpha King of the entire northern continent, the man known as the Iron Wolf, the man who was rumoured to have executed his own uncle for treason. "Oh God," Tessa whispered, hand over her mouth. "I just kidnapped the king." Lachlan groaned, his eyes fluttering open. The gold was dull, his vision clearly blurry from the poison. He couldn't see her, but he turned his head sharply toward her, inhaling deeply. "Mate," he rasped, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. Tessa froze. "What?" "Mine," he muttered, his hand reaching out blindly toward her. "Safe." Then his head hit the floor, and he passed out cold. Tessa stared at him, the king of wolves, lying vulnerable on the floor of a dusty cabin. She looked at the door. She could run. She could leave him here, anonymous and safe, and disappear before he woke up and realized an Omega had touched him. But then she looked at the silver dart she had pulled from his flank. Someone had tried to kill him. Someone close enough to get a dart into the king. If she left him, they would come back to finish the job. "You called me mate," she whispered, grabbing a blanket from the dusty cupboard. She draped it over him, her fingers brushing his burning skin. "You're delusional, Your Majesty. But I guess I'm stuck with you." She sat by the fire, watching the chest of the most dangerous man in the world rise and fall, holding her skinning knife tight. Outside, the storm raged on, sealing them in. The storm outside howled with renewed fury, shaking the sturdy logs of the ranger station, but the real battle was happening inside. 3 hours had passed since Tessa dragged the Alpha King into the cabin. The temperature in the room had risen thanks to the roaring fire, but Lachlan was burning up. His skin was scorching to the touch, beads of sweat rolling down his chest, pooling in the intricate ink of his tattoos. Tessa knelt beside him, a bowl of melted snow water and a rag in her hands. She dabbed his forehead, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had stripped him of his tattered, wet remnants of clothing to inspect the wound on his flank. It was ugly. Purple and black veins were spiderwebbing out from the puncture site, pulsing in time with his erratic heartbeat. "Blue night poison," she muttered to herself, her hands shaking slightly. "It coagulates the blood. I need to keep it flowing." She didn't have medical supplies. She only had her survival instincts. She took her knife, sterilized the blade in the fire until it glowed red and turned back to the king. "This is going to hurt," she whispered. "Please don't wake up and kill me." She pressed the hot blade to the wound. Lachlan roared. It was a sound of pure agony that shook the dust from the rafters. His back arched off the floor, muscles snapping taut as steel cables. His hand shot out blindly, clamping around Tessa's wrist. His grip was bone-crushing. "Stop!" he growled, his eyes flying open. They were no longer dull. They were swirling with a chaotic mix of gold and blood red. The poison was fighting his wolf for control. "I'm saving you!" Tessa cried out, trying to pry his fingers off. "The poison is trapping the blood. I have to drain it." Lachlan blinked, his vision swimming. He saw a blurred face, a halo of frizzy hair, and smelled lavender, cheap soap and fear. But beneath that, something else, something ancient. Home. His grip loosened, his hand sliding up her arm to cup the back of her neck. He pulled her down until her face was inches from his. "Who are you?" He rasped. "Nobody," Tessa stammered, terrified by the intensity of his gaze. "I'm just Tessa. I found you in the snow." "Tessa." He tested the name, the sound rumbling in his chest. "You smell like mine." "I'm an Omega," she said quickly, pulling back. "I don't have a wolf, Your Majesty. I can't be anyone's mate. You're hallucinating." Lachlan didn't seem to hear her. His body began to convulse again, the shivering returning with a vengeance. The poison was moving deeper. "Cold," he chattered, his teeth clacking together. "So, cold." Tessa checked the fire. It was roaring, but it wasn't enough. Alpha metabolism was different. When they crashed hard. If his core temperature dropped too low, his heart would stop. She looked at the shivering king, then at the single, moth-eaten wool blanket she had found. It wasn't enough. There was only one way to keep a wolf warm when their internal furnace failed. Skin to skin. Tessa swallowed hard. This was treason. Touching the king was forbidden for someone of her rank. Lying with him? That was a death sentence if anyone found out. But if he died, she had dragged him 6 miles for nothing. "Don't make me regret this," she whispered. She stripped off her damp jeans and heavy sweater, leaving herself in her thin cotton undershirt and underwear. Taking a deep breath, she crawled under the blanket and pressed her body against his side. The shock of his heat against her cold skin made her gasp. He was like a burning coal. Lachlan, even in his delirium, reacted instantly. His arm swept around her waist, pulling her flush against him. He buried his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling deeply. "Mine," he murmured against her skin. "I'm just a heat source," Tessa reminded him softly, though her heart was doing somersaults. "Just sleep, Lachlan." For the next 6 hours, time seemed to dissolve. Tessa lay awake, listening to the storm and the steady, ragged breathing of the man beside her. Every time she tried to shift away, he would growl low in his throat and tighten his grip, his leg throwing itself over hers to pin her down. It was intimate in a way that terrified her. She was a nobody, a washerwoman from the Silver Pine Pack. He was the ruler of the continent. But here, in the dark, he held her as if she were the only anchor keeping him from drifting away. Around 4 a.m., the fever broke. Lachlan's breathing deepened, becoming rhythmic and peaceful. The burning heat of his skin cooled to a comfortable warmth. Tessa, exhausted from the trek and the stress, finally allowed her eyes to close. She drifted off with the scent of pine and rain, Lachlan's scent, filling her lungs. She didn't hear the hum of engines approaching in the distance. She didn't hear the crunch of military-grade boots on the snow outside. She was asleep in the arms of the king when the door was kicked in. Crash. The heavy oak door splintered inward, flying off its hinges. Tessa screamed, jolting awake. Before she could process what was happening, blinding tactical lights flooded the small cabin. "Secure the target! Go! Go! Go!" Men in black tactical gear swarmed the room like ants. They were royal guards, huge, hulking wolves in human form, holding assault rifles loaded with silver bullets. "Hands! Let me see your hands!" a voice boomed. Tessa scrambled backward, clutching the blanket to her chest. "Wait! She was cut off as a soldier grabbed her by the hair and yanked her off the floor. She yelped in pain, hitting the wall hard. "Target secure! The king is alive!" the soldier shouted into his headset. Lachlan was groggy. The noise roused him, but the sedatives in the poison still lingered. He tried to sit up, his eyes unfocused. "What?" "Your Majesty." A tall, broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his cheek pushed through the soldiers. It was General Graves, the head of the Royal Guard. He fell to his knees beside Lachlan. "We found you. Thank the moon." "Graves." Lachlan rubbed his temples, wincing. "How did you—" "We tracked the tracker in your alpha ring, sir. The signal was jammed by the storm until an hour ago." Graves looked around the cabin, his nose wrinkling. Then his eyes landed on Tessa, who was being held against the wall by 2 guards, shivering and half-naked. "And who is this?" Graves spat, standing up. "Did you find the assassin, sir?" "Assassin?" Lachlan blinked, his memory hazy. He looked at Tessa. He remembered the cold. He remembered the pain. And he remembered warmth, lavender, soft skin. "She—" Lachlan started, trying to stand, but his legs were like jelly. "She helped me." "Helped you?" A sharp, feminine voice cut through the chaos. A woman stepped into the cabin. She was immaculate, dressed in a white fur coat that cost more than Tessa's entire village. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and her blue eyes were as cold as the ice outside. This was Lady Celeste, the daughter of the Southern Duke, and the woman the council had been pressuring Lachlan to marry for years. Celeste looked at the sled in the corner, then at the knife on the floor, and finally at Tessa. Her eyes narrowed with calculated malice. "It looks to me," Celeste said, walking over to Tessa, "like she dragged him here to finish the job in private, or perhaps to hold him for ransom." "No!" Tessa shouted, struggling against the guards. "I found him dying. I dragged him 6 miles to save him. I pulled the poison out." "Lies," Celeste said smoothly. She reached out and slapped Tessa across the face. The sound cracked through the room. "An Omega, dragging a 300-pound Alpha 6 miles. It's biologically impossible. You must have had accomplices. Where are they?" "I'm telling the truth," Tessa cried, tears stinging her eyes. She looked desperately at Lachlan. Tell them I saved you." Lachlan was fighting the fog in his brain. He saw Celeste strike the girl, and a low growl built in his chest. "Celeste, stand down. She has your scent all over her, Lachlan," Celeste interrupted, her voice dropping to a poisonous whisper, so only he and Graves could hear. "She's an unclaimed stray. She probably forced herself on you while you were incapacitated to try and trick you into a mating bond. It's a common tactic for trash like her." Lachlan paused. The bond. He felt it tugging at him, pulling him toward the girl with the frizzy hair. But Celeste's words planted a seed of doubt. Was the mate feeling real? Or was it a side effect of the blue night poison, which was known to cause hallucinations and hypersensitivity? He looked at Tessa. She looked small, dirty, and pathetic in the grip of his guards. Could she really have dragged him 6 miles? It seemed impossible. "General Graves," Lachlan said, his voice hardening as he regained his composure. "Secure the area. Bring the girl in for questioning." Tessa's heart shattered. Questioning? "You can't do this," she screamed as the guards zip-tied her wrists behind her back. "I saved his life. I kept him warm. Lachlan." "Gag her," Graves ordered. A soldier shoved a cloth into her mouth and secured it. "We need to airlift you immediately, Your Majesty," Graves said, helping Lachlan to his feet. "The medical team is waiting in the chopper." Lachlan stumbled toward the door, flanked by his men. As he passed Tessa, he stopped. He looked down at her. Her eyes were wide, filled with betrayal and fear. The pull toward her was agonizing. Every instinct in his wolf screamed at him to rip the guards apart and claim her. "She is mine," his wolf roared in his head. "She is a stranger," his logic argued, "and you were vulnerable." "If you saved me," Lachlan said quietly, his voice devoid of the warmth he had shown in the night, "the truth will come out. If you poisoned me, you will wish you had died in this storm." He turned and walked out into the blinding snow. Celeste lingered for a moment. She leaned in close to Tessa's ear, a cruel smile playing on her red lips. "Good try, little rat," she whispered, "but the Queen's crown doesn't fit on a head like yours. I'll make sure you never leave the dungeons." Celeste turned on her heel and followed the king. "Move it!" The guard shoved Tessa forward. She stumbled out into the cold morning light. 2 massive helicopters were churning up the snow. She watched as Lachlan was loaded into the lead chopper, wrapped in thermal blankets, attended to by medics. He didn't look back. Tessa was thrown into the back of the second chopper, sandwiched between 2 silent, masked guards. As the machine lifted off, leaving the ranger station and her sled behind, Tessa looked down at her hands. They were still raw and blistered from the rope. She had saved the king, and for her trouble, she was about to be walked straight into hell. But as the helicopter banked toward the royal city, a spark of anger ignited in Tessa's chest. It burned hotter than the fire in the cabin. She wasn't the weak Omega they thought she was. She had survived the blizzard. She had survived the poison, and she would survive the king. The royal dungeons were not designed to hold criminals. They were designed to break them. Tessa sat in the corner of a cell hewn from black bedrock. The air was damp and smelled of ancient mold and dried blood. Her wrists were raw where the zip ties had been, now replaced by heavy iron shackles that dampened any shifter ability. Not that she had any to dampen. It had been 12 hours since they dragged her from the helicopter. 12 hours of darkness. The heavy iron door groaned open. Tessa flinched, pulling her knees to her chest. She expected the guards again, the ones who had spat on her and called her traitor. Instead, the click of high heels echoed on the stone floor. Lady Celeste appeared in the harsh light of the hallway, holding a silk handkerchief to her nose. "Disgusting," Celeste murmured, looking around the cell. "But fitting." "Why are you doing this?" Tessa rasped. Her voice was hoarse from screaming her innocence. "I saved him. You saw the sled. You saw the tracks." "I saw an opportunity," Celeste said, stepping closer to the bars. Her blue eyes glittered with malice. "You see, you little mutt, my family has been trying to remove Lachlan for months. He's too rigid, too unwilling to expand our territory. We needed him gone so my father could take the regency." Tessa's eyes widened. You were the one who hired the hunter. You poisoned him." "Smart girl," Celeste smiled. "But who will believe you? You're a wolfless Omega, a nobody, and I am the future queen." Celeste reached through the bars, gripping Tessa's chin with surprisingly strong fingers, digging her nails in. "Here is what is going to happen," Celeste whispered. "Tomorrow, at the inquiry, you will confess. You will say you were working with rogue wolves. You will say you poisoned him to ransom him. If you do, I will grant you a quick execution. If you don't, I will make sure you die so slowly you'll beg for the fire." She shoved Tessa back and turned to leave. "Sleep tight, traitor." Meanwhile, in the royal infirmary, Alpha King Lachlan Moore was tearing his restraints apart. "Let me go," he roared, the sound shaking the glass vials on the medical carts. "Your Majesty, you still have toxins in your blood," General Graves pleaded, trying to hold the king down. "You need rest." "My wolf is tearing my mind apart, Graves," Lachlan snarled, his eyes flashing that dangerous mix of gold and red. "He wants her. He says she's in pain." "Why is she in pain?" "Because she's in the dungeon, sir," Graves said firmly. "She is the prime suspect. The poison used was Blue Night. Only high-level assassins have access to it. An Omega living in a shack doesn't just stumble upon the king and save him. It's a setup." Lachlan fell back onto the pillows, breathing heavily. Logic told him Graves was right. It was too convenient. But his skin still burned where she had touched him. He remembered the cold cabin. He remembered her shivering body pressed against his, sacrificing her warmth for him. She didn't smell like deception, his wolf growled. She smelled like snow and sacrifice. "Bring her to the throne room," Lachlan ordered, his voice cold and final. "Sir, the interrogation isn't scheduled until—" "I said bring her!" Lachlan sat up, ripping the IV from his arm. "Now, I will judge her myself, and bring the sorceress. We will use the Stone of Veritas." Graves paled. The Stone of Veritas was an ancient artifact that forced the truth from a wolf's soul. It was agonizingly painful. Using it on an Omega could kill her. "Sir, she might not survive the stone," Graves warned. "If she lies, she dies anyway," Lachlan said, swinging his legs off the bed. "If she tells the truth, then may the moon have mercy on us all." The throne room was cavernous, intimidating, and filled with the entire royal court. Whispers hissed through the air like snakes as Tessa was dragged in. She looked terrible. Her clothes were torn, her face was bruised from the rough handling, and she was shivering violently. But when she saw Lachlan sitting on the obsidian throne, she stopped struggling. He looked majestic. He had recovered his strength, dressed in a black military uniform with gold epaulets, but his face was a mask of granite. He didn't look like the man she had held in the cabin. He looked like the executioner. "Tessa Reynolds," Lachlan's voice boomed, amplified by the acoustics of the hall. "You stand accused of high treason, attempted regicide, and conspiracy with rogue factions. How do you plead?" Tessa stood tall, despite the chains. She looked him dead in the eye. "I plead stupidity," she said, her voice ringing clear. "Stupidity for thinking an alpha would ever thank a nobody for saving his life." Gasps rippled through the court. Celeste, standing near the throne, scoffed. "Insolence! Kill her now!" "Silence!" Lachlan commanded. He descended the stairs of the dais, stopping just feet from Tessa. The pull of the bond was so strong it made his knees weak, but he locked it down. "We will not rely on words. Bring the stone." An elderly woman in hooded robes stepped forward, carrying a glowing blue crystal on a velvet pillow. The Stone of Veritas. "Place your hand on the stone," Lachlan ordered. "If you lie, it will burn the flesh from your bones. If you speak truth, it will glow white." Tessa looked at the stone. She was terrified, but she had nothing left to lose. She reached out and placed her small, trembling hand on the jagged crystal. "Did you poison me?" Lachlan asked, his golden eyes boring into hers. The court held its breath. Celeste smirked, waiting for the girl to scream. "No," Tessa said. The stone flashed, white, pure, blinding white. The court murmured in shock. Celeste's smile faltered. Lachlan took a step closer. "Did you drag me to the ranger station?" "Yes." "White." Did you keep me warm with your own body to stop the hypothermia?" Lachlan asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes. I thought you were going to die. I couldn't let you die alone." "White?" The light was so bright now it hurt to look at. Lachlan stared at the light. Every answer was truth. Every suspicion he had was wrong. He had chained the woman who saved him. He had let his guards beat the woman who carried him through a blizzard. "One last question," Celeste shrieked, stepping forward, panic in her eyes. "Who did you work with? Who gave you the location?" "No one," Tessa said, looking at Celeste. "I was checking my rabbit snares. I was hungry. White." "Enough!" Lachlan roared. He grabbed Tessa's hand, pulling it off the stone. He looked at her wrist. It wasn't burned. It was untouched. "She is innocent," Lachlan announced, turning to the court. "Release her." "But the poison," Celeste argued, desperate now. "The dart found in his leg. It was clearly—" "General Graves." A shout came from the entrance. A young forensic analyst ran into the room, holding a plastic bag containing the silver dart Tessa had pulled from Lachlan. "We finished the spectral analysis on the dart, sir," the analyst panted. "The alloy. It's not rogue iron. It's Valyrian steel." Silence descended on the room. Valyrian steel was rare, extremely rare. "There is only one forge in the kingdom that produces Valyrian steel," Lachlan said slowly, his voice dropping to a terrifying growl. He turned his head, his predatory gaze locking onto Celeste. "The Southern Duchy." Celeste froze. That's impossible. Someone must have stolen it from my father's armory." Lachlan stalked toward her. The air in the room crackled with alpha power, making the stained glass windows vibrate. "You were the first to suggest she was guilty. You were the one who knew exactly where to find us. And you are the one who stands to gain the most if I die." "Lachlan, please," Celeste stammered, backing away until she hit the wall. "I am your intended. I am a duchess." "You are a traitor," Lachlan snarled. "Guards, seize her and her entire entourage. Lock them in the deepest cells. If they try to shift, put them down." As the guards swarmed Celeste, dragging the screaming noblewoman away, the chaos in the room exploded. But Lachlan didn't care. He turned back to Tessa. She was standing alone in the middle of the room, still in chains. She looked exhausted, broken, and small. Lachlan felt his heart crack. The reality of what he had done crashed into him like a freight train. He had almost killed his mate. He walked toward her, not as a king, but as a man. He stopped in front of her and dropped to his knees. The entire court went silent. The Alpha King never knelt. "Tessa," he whispered, reaching out to touch the chains on her wrists. With a savage twist of his hands, he snapped the iron links as if they were paper. They clattered to the floor. He took her bruised hands in his. "I am so sorry." Tessa looked down at him. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just pulled her hands away from his grip. "You should be," she said, her voice shaking. "I saved your life, Lachlan. I gave you everything I had on that mountain, and you threw me in a cage." "I know," Lachlan pleaded, his eyes searching hers. "I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I will give you the world. I don't want the world," Tessa said quietly. She stepped back, putting distance between them. "I just want to go home to my shack. I want to forget I ever met you." She turned and began to walk toward the massive doors. Lachlan stayed on his knees, stunned. The rejection hit him harder than the poison ever had. His wolf howled in agony. "Don't let her leave," Graves shouted to the guards at the door. "Let her go," Lachlan commanded, his voice broken. He watched her small figure disappear through the doors. "She needs to heal, and I need to earn the right to follow her." He stood up, his face hardening. "Graves, get my car, and get the royal jeweler. I have a lot of groveling to do." The silence of the shack was different now. Before, it had been the silence of solitude. Now, it was the silence of absence. Tessa Reynolds sat on the edge of her sagging mattress, staring at the empty grate of her small stove. It had been 3 days since she had walked out of the royal palace. 3 days since she had rejected the most powerful man on the continent. She should feel relieved. She had her freedom. She wasn't in a dungeon. But every time the wind howled outside, her body phantom ached for a warmth that wasn't there. She kept remembering the weight of his head on her shoulder, the desperate way he had whispered, "Mine," in the delirium of the fever. "Stop it," she scolded herself, aggressively shoving a log into the stove. "He almost got you executed. He's a king. You're a laundry girl." End of story. But the story wasn't over. The next morning, the noise began. It started with the rumble of heavy trucks. Tessa peered out her frosted window to see a convoy of construction vehicles rolling up the narrow, snow-packed lane to her shack. Men in coveralls emblazoned with the logo Apex Construction were jumping out, carrying tool belts and lumber. Tessa stormed out, grabbing her coat. "What is this? Who are you?" A burly foreman with a clipboard stepped forward. "Morning, ma'am. Work order for a complete renovation. Insulation, new roof, solar heating unit, and a perimeter fence." "I didn't order this," Tessa snapped. "I can't pay for this." The foreman tipped his hard hat. "It's already paid for, Miss Reynolds, in full, by the Crown Estate. We're also instructed to install a heavy-duty security system." Tessa's jaw tightened. Charity, or worse, guilt money. "Send it back," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't want it." "With all due respect, ma'am," the foreman said, glancing at the rotting wood of her porch. "The king made it clear that if we didn't finish this job by sunset tomorrow, our company loses its royal charter. So, for the sake of my guys' jobs, please just let us fix the roof." Tessa watched the crew. They were just working men. She couldn't punish them for Lachlan's arrogance. She crossed her arms and went back inside, fuming. By evening, her shack was unrecognizable. It was weatherproofed, warm and secure, but the deliveries didn't stop. A courier from Harrison & Sons grocers arrived with boxes of fresh produce, high-quality steaks, and, cruelly, a carton of the expensive chocolate milk she used to stare at in the store window but could never afford. Then came the clothes. Boxes from Madame Beauchamp's, the premier boutique in the city. Coats lined with thermal silk, boots made of dragon leather, sweaters softer than clouds. There was no note, just the overwhelming, suffocating pressure of his care. On the fourth day, Tessa had enough. She marched out of her house, intending to walk the 3 miles to the main pack house to demand a phone to call the palace. She didn't have to walk far. A black SUV was parked at the edge of the tree line, blending into the shadows. As she stomped toward it, the rear door opened. Lachlan stepped out. He wasn't wearing his military uniform or his royal regalia. He was wearing jeans and a thick grey sweater, looking more like the man she had saved than the king who had judged her. He looked tired. Dark circles bruised the skin under his golden eyes. "You're stubborn," he said, his voice raspy. "And you're overbearing," Tessa shot back, stopping 10 feet away. She refused to get closer. The bond was humming under her skin like a live wire, urging her to run to him, to comfort him. She locked her knees to keep from moving. "I don't want your things, Lachlan. A new roof doesn't fix the fact that you watched them chain me up." "I know," he said simply. He didn't argue. He didn't make excuses. "I don't expect the roof to fix it. I couldn't sleep thinking of you shivering in that drafty shack. Not after I know how cold you get." The admission took the wind out of her sails. He remembered. "Why are you here?" she whispered. "Because the council is trying to declare the mating bond invalid," Lachlan said, his eyes darkening. "They are citing an old law, Section 4, Paragraph 2. No alpha of royal blood may mate with a wolf of 0 rank. They want me to reject you formally." Tessa felt a cold pit open in her stomach. "So you came to do it in person? To save face?" Lachlan laughed, a dark, humorless sound. He took a step forward, the snow crunching under his boots. "No, Tessa. I came to tell you that I am going to burn that law to the ground, but I can't do it alone. I need you." "You need an Omega?" Tessa asked bitterly. "I need the woman who carried me through hell," he corrected. "I need the only person in this kingdom who was brave enough to tell me the truth when I was holding a death sentence over her head." He stopped just inches from her. He didn't touch her. He respected the boundary she had set. Tomorrow night is the lunar solstice ball, Lachlan said softly. The entire High Council will be there. Councillor Veric, the man leading the opposition, plans to publicly demand I choose a new mate. I want you to be there. They will eat me alive, Tessa said, her voice trembling. I don't belong in a ballroom, Lachlan. I scrub floors. You belong by my side, he said, his golden eyes burning into hers. Come with me. Let me show them what a real queen looks like. If at the end of the night you still want to return to this shack, I will never bother you again. I swear it on my wolf. It was a gamble, a massive, terrifying gamble. But looking at him, seeing the raw vulnerability in the eyes of a predator, Tessa realized something. He wasn't asking her to be a trophy. He was asking her to be a partner. One night, she whispered. Lachlan exhaled, a sound of pure relief. One night. The royal ballroom was a sea of velvet, diamonds, and judgment. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and alpha pheromones. Hundreds of the most powerful wolves in the Northern Territory were gathered, sipping champagne and whispering behind their fans. When the herald announced, His Majesty, King Lachlan Moore, the room went silent. Lachlan appeared at the top of the grand staircase. He was breathtaking in a tuxedo of midnight blue, the royal crest pinned to his lapel. But no one was looking at him. They were looking at the woman on his arm. Tessa wore a gown of shimmering silver, the fabric moving like liquid moonlight around her frame. It was high-necked and long-sleeved, modest yet undeniably regal. Her frizzy hair had been tamed into cascading waves, woven with small diamond pins. She was an omega. Everyone could smell it. But she didn't walk like one. She walked with her head high, her hand resting lightly on the king's arm, matching his stride, step for step. She had dragged 200 pounds through a blizzard. Walking in heels was nothing. As they descended the stairs, a murmur broke out. Councillor Veric, a thin man with a goatee and eyes like a vulture, pushed his way to the front of the crowd. Your Majesty, Veric said loudly, stopping the couple at the bottom of the stairs. This is highly irregular. Bringing a servant to the lunar ball. Is this some sort of jest? Lachlan stopped. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Councillor Veric, Lachlan said, his voice smooth but deadly. I believe you haven't been introduced. This is Tessa Reynolds, the woman who saved my life, and my fated mate. Fated or not, the law is clear, Veric snapped, gesturing to the crowd for support. An omega has no standing in court. She is genetically weak. She cannot produce strong heirs. She cannot lead. To place a crown on her head is an insult to our lineage. Weak? Lachlan repeated softly. He turned to Tessa. He didn't shield her. He didn't hide her behind his back. He stepped aside, giving her the floor. Tessa felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on her. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The moment she ran or the moment she fought. She looked at Veric. You speak of strength, Councillor. But I am curious. When the blizzard of 98 hit, where were you? Veric blinked, taken aback. I was in my bunker, of course. Safe. Safe, Tessa nodded. While you were safe in your bunker, I was dragging your king 6 miles through sub-zero winds. I fought off scavengers with a skinning knife. I pulled valerian poison from his veins with my bare hands while he thrashed in agony. She took a step toward Veric. The councillor actually took a step back, unnerved by the steel in her gaze. You measure strength by how loud you can growl or how hard you can hit, Tessa said, her voice ringing through the silent hall. I measure strength by endurance, by survival. I didn't need a wolf spirit to save the king. I just needed the will to keep going when everyone else would have quit. So tell me, counselor. If the king falls again, who do you want by his side? A duchess who hides in a bunker? Or the Omega who brings him home? Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. Then, slowly, a slow clap started. It was General Graves. He was standing by the punch bowl, his face grim but approving. He clapped again. Then the captain of the guard joined in. Then the ladies of the court. Within seconds, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar of approval. The pack valued survival above all else, and Tessa had just proven she was the ultimate survivor. Varric turned red, sputtering, but he was drowned out. Lachlan looked at Tessa, his eyes shining with pride, so intense it was almost blinding. He took her hand and led her to the center of the room. "You did it," he whispered in her ear. "I was terrified," she admitted, her knees finally starting to shake. "You didn't look it," he smiled. He signaled the band. The music shifted to a slow, haunting waltz. Lachlan pulled her close, his hand resting possessively on her waist. "Section 4. Paragraph 2 is repealed effectively immediately," he murmured against her hair. "I am the king. I make the laws, and I say that the Omega who saved me is the only queen I will ever accept." "Lachlan," she said, pulling back slightly to look at him. "I'm still just Tessa. I like my shack. I like my quiet life." "We can build a shack in the palace gardens," he promised. "We can go there every weekend. No guards, no counselors. Just us." Tessa searched his face. She saw the regret, the love, and the hope. She realized that the loneliness she had felt for 22 years was gone. It had evaporated the moment she found him in the snow. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Okay." She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that transformed her face. "But I'm keeping the sled, as a reminder." Lachlan laughed, a sound of pure joy that echoed to the rafters. "Keep the sled. Keep the knife. Keep the crown. Just keep me." He leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a tentative kiss like the one in the cabin might have been. It was a claiming, deep, passionate, and final. As their lips met, a collective gasp went through the room. A golden light began to emanate from Tessa. It swirled around her, bright and warm. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a fleeting second, the brown irises flashed a brilliant, piercing gold. The mark of the Luna. The moon goddess hadn't just watched the blizzard. She had been waiting. The wolfless Omega finally had a spirit, not born of blood, but earned through fire and ice. Lachlan pulled back, seeing the gold in her eyes. He smiled, pressing his forehead to hers. "Long live the Queen," he whispered, and the entire room bowed. And that is the story of how a rejected Omega became the savior of the Alpha King. From the freezing winds of the Northern Territory to the glittering lights of the royal ballroom, Tessa proved that true power isn't about claws or fangs, it's about the heart. She didn't just save Lachlan's life, she saved his soul, teaching a kingdom that even the smallest among them can cast the biggest shadow. I hope you enjoyed this roller coaster of emotion, betrayal, and redemption. If Tessa's bravery moved you, or if you were cheering when she put Councillor Varric in his place, please give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. We have a dark billionaire romance coming up next week that you won't want to miss. What did you think of Lachlan's redemption? Was it enough? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next one.